Mr. Godis, can you hear me? Sorry. I know you were shaking your head, yes.
Yes.
I was having a problem with my audio. Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute.
No, you sound great, Tony. All right, everybody, let's call this meeting to order. Are we good to go? Give me a thumbs up, everybody. All right, welcome everybody, public and staff and council to our meeting. It's July 2nd. Catherine, could you do roll call?
Wilman,
Here.
Voorhees,
Here.
Cobb,
Here.
Godis,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Stepp,
Here.
Hershey.
Present.
All right, let's, what's next? Oh, it's a Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is agenda changes and conflicts. Does anybody have any changes they would like to see in this agenda? Any conflicts that anybody has this evening on anything on the agenda?
No.
No.
I have no conflicts.
Okay. Before we move on to citizens appearing before council, I announced it earlier, but Garfield County has had its third COVID death. I'd just like to take about a moment, 10 or 15 seconds, and a moment of silence to honor that victim of COVID. All right, thank you. Citizens appearing before council is the next agenda item. This is for items that are not on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda and you want to talk about, I don't know, maybe face coverings, for example, we will, I don't believe we're taking public comment for that this evening. So if you want to speak on that this evening, now is your time to do that. But anything else on the agenda, go ahead and raise your hand in the crowd. We have two hands up. We have Cindy Savadas and Daniel Sullivan, and then Monica. So Cindy, go ahead. Unmute your mic. It's in the lower left-hand corner. There you go.
Am I done? Yep. Hello.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. So I just wanted to give council an update on the farmers market. We had 2 markets already, and people love it on 7th Street. We've had fabulous feedback from everybody. But what we really want to see, we would really, really like to see all of you, council and city staff. I never see any of you guys there. I haven't for the first 2 of this year. And I just want you to really see how it is, you know, live and in person, how the vitality is downtown and what it's adding to just the businesses down there. And figure out why I'm so passionately goofy about this market that I've been doing for 15 years. I just want you to see it for yourself. And we need city support. We need to see city staff and council there. And one thing that has bothered me is I'm not getting any of the, I haven't gotten enough, we haven't gotten any advertising really from the newspaper. And we're not getting the EBT people, the people who use food stamps there. And, you know, we double their benefits. So somehow I have to really figure out how to get the word out more to them. But if you guys would just come on down on a Tuesday night, meet the vendors, talk to them, figure out why this is what they love to do, and just see all the visitors that are down there. I mean, this was a scary move for us to move to 7th Street. You know, you leave a comfort zone of after 14 years, and I think it's working. The restaurants like it, the vendors like it, the people I talk to like it. So I really want you guys to come down and like it too. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. Just so you know, I was down there for 2 hours the other night. I enjoyed the piano player greatly. It was great. The vitality was fantastic. So just so you know,
Okay.
I was there.
All right. So stop by and say hello to us in our market booth.
I'll do that next time. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Cindy. Dan Sullivan.
Okay, can you hear me now, Jonathan?
I can absolutely hear you, sir.
Awesome. Good evening, Council. Great to be with you. Dan Sullivan, owner of the Green Joint, 1030 Grand Avenue. The topic I'd like to just run by you guys tonight is really maybe time to consider a cap on the number of recreational marijuana stores we have in the town. And I'm kind of coming at this from a couple of perspectives. Obviously, as you may know, we've been with the longest tenured, I think I'm the oldest owner operator and almost coming up on 11 years in the greater Roaring Fork Valley. And it's been a great ride, and we love having our flagship here in Glenwood. And we've expanded to some other markets, but I'm finding some uneven competitive landscape. As I look around, if we just kind of draw a comparison to liquor stores, I currently count 9 liquor stores open in the city. Cooper, Turtles, Grand Avenue Liquors, Red Mountain Wine, Big Sid's, Roaring Fork Liquors, Wild West, Westmart, and 4 Mile Mountain Market. We currently have 7 open recreational marijuana dispensaries and Native Roots, which may not be active any longer because I think they applied in late 2016. But if you look at surrounding communities, Basalt only allows 2. Carbondale currently has 3. I think they have a max of 5. Newcastle, none allowed. Rifle, a max of 3. Parachute, a max of 10. Steamboat, which we worked on for a couple of years, only a max of 3. And I think we've also heard recently that there's enough interest from local residents that says, you know, it's open, that's great, but we don't really need any more. Certainly the demand and supply is being met. So I'd really like to ask council to consider and get on the agenda for staff an opportunity to let's lock it down to the existing 7 active licensees, take effect immediately, kind of an emergency moratorium. COVID significantly impacted our second quarter, April, May, June sales. I think it's not like the city's going to lose on any tax revenues because the pie is the pie and there's quite a bit of diversity and accessibility. So I really think it's time to put an emergency cap on. And I'd also come in early, but next year delivery is going to be allowed in the state if the local community opts in. I'd like to be kind of put a temporary hold on that. I don't want somebody outside who doesn't have the sweat, blood, and tears of putting a brick and mortar up and being in business for over a decade to swoop in and be able to do that. I know there's some interesting issues with that, but at the end of the day, it's a competitive market. The demand is being met. I really don't think we need any more. I think there's plenty of residents and families who would like to say, that's good. We have somewhat parity between liquor and marijuana. It's probably time to put a cap on it, and the sooner the better. I appreciate your hearing me. Thanks, guys, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. And I really appreciate your service on the Financial Advisory Board Committee that you've contributed the last several years. You're a great asset to those guys, to us guys. Monica and then Ricky Rodriguez. Monica, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Rhodes. So quick question. You guys are not going to take public comments for face masks, correct?
You know, that was not our intent, but
You want me
if because when we took off the indefinitely part, we said that we would discuss it, and if any new information came up, then we would take public comment. So I'm open if the rest of council wants to take public comment during that agenda item. You know, give me a thumbs up if you prefer to take comment at that time. I see one thumbs up. I see maybe don't care from Charlie. Okay. Yeah, you know, Monica, if you have a question on the face mask, I guess we'll just take public comment at that time. I'm not opposed to doing it. So if you want to make comments tonight on something other than the face mask, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. We'll take up public comment at that time. So is that what you wanted to speak about, or do you have another comment?
My comment is, it has to do with the face mask. It actually has to do with emergency powers. I just didn't know if you wanted me to speak now or if you want me to wait for the face mask time to speak.
Yeah, I think I think we're just fine taking public comment for during the face mask period. So if you could hold your comments till then, it'd be probably more apropos.
Sounds great. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Monica. I see that a hand went up by, oh, where'd he go? Oh, Ricky. Ricky had his hand up and then he lowered it. So Ricky, if you got off and you want to jump back on and you want to give public comment about face masks, we'll be there very, very shortly. So if you can hear me and jump back on, we'd love to hear your comments on that as well. So I am going to, is there any other comment for the public? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council comments. Paula.
Boy, I always get to be first lately. That's great. So I had a couple of things. We had some comments in the forum and post forum about some way that we could put signage possibly downtown. I did talk to Deborah a bit about this, but just to kind of put what our policies are out in front of our visitors so that they're aware of, you know, our face covering policy or anything else that we might have that might not be what they're seeing in their own communities. And I think that would help our businesses to use our sign shop to put a couple of things on the pedestrian bridge and maybe down under the bridge in the plaza. But I think that would help us out. So I'd love to have that for a council discussion. So I'll open that up and just see if if you guys want to talk about it now or put that in a later in the meeting. And on that same note, I know there's been some question about security downtown, and I know we don't have the funding like we had last year, but I'm wondering if we just want to talk about policy and discussion on, I think right now what we're doing is just calling Chief Darris if there is a problem, and just so any council person would know, here's the steps you take, or any citizen would know, here's the steps you take if they feel there's a concern. I think that should be something that, you know, we discuss as a council so that people downtown know that we understand what their concerns are. So those are kind of my downtown thing. And then I actually have a comment on cannabis, marijuana. And this came from a citizen here in Glenwood Springs who's involved in you know, cannabis business and that type of stuff. And he said he was wondering if there's any cautionary advice that we're asking cannabis shops to share or that's coming down from the state. And I actually have asked Jill Hunsucker if there's anything at the state level to say, don't share your pot right now on a common device. Because that's a really good way to contract COVID-19. So I've put it out at the state, you know, just to say, is there anything at that level? I don't know if we want to say something or at least advise our shops to say, can you, you know, share that with your customers. I just think, I know it's a legal question, so Carl would probably have to address this as well, but it is something that nobody's really spoken to yet. And that is a common usage of marijuana, is sharing marijuana through devices. So something to think about. So those are my 3 things. And I'd love to know what the council thinks about a little bit of signage downtown to our visitors, just to show, here's our policies, please help us keep Glenwood open by following these policies. That's basically the message I see, is we want our businesses open, and them participating will make that happen.
Sorry. Thanks, Paula. Shelley, then Paula, or Shelley, then, oh, Deborah, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Deborah.
I was just gonna say, you know, staff was waiting until you guys decided what you wanted to do with face coverings tonight. And then we are more than happy to come up with a fun, creative sign campaign. Because we're fun.
All right. Thanks. That's probably prudent. Shelley, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I have a couple of updates and comments in line with what Paula was talking about. This morning, though, I attended a meeting of the CC4CA. They formed a pandemic recovery response subgroup, of which I'm part of now. And it's a really interesting discussion. It's representatives from the other jurisdictions in CC4CA. So they're all over the state, from Fort Collins all the way to Telluride, and just talking about how the member communities can support each other, but also come out of the pandemic stronger, more resilient as we navigate economic recovery. So there's a lot of good ideas as far as kind of trying to mitigate some of the impacts we're seeing, such as more single-use material waste with takeout food and just all the wipes. I know I brought up that we're seeing extra wipes in our wastewater treatment plant, things like that. So it's a really great group, and we might want to get just a handle on how this can affect you know, our economic recovery. And it's a really great group to share ideas with. So I'm excited about that, and I'll update further as there more conversations come along. In line with what Paula brought up, I have had comments from at least one out-of-town visitor, and then about 3 other people that are locals that have been going downtown, and they're concerned about the level of crowding downtown, particularly on the Wing Streets and Bethel Plaza. And I know, you know, we designed this beautiful plaza for people to socialize and gather in. Unfortunately, at this time, with the rising cases in the county, we need to be able to ensure that that's a safe area. So we want to keep the public safe. We want to keep the businesses open. So it seems like a lot of the people down there, I'm not sure what's driving it. Maybe a lot of them are waiting for tables. They might be on a waiting list at a restaurant. So I was wondering if that might be a conversation that we could have with some of the restaurants, is changing that system so that people show up when they know they'll get a table. There was an idea actually on the meeting this morning from Telluride. They actually have 3 rangers. They're calling them rangers. I think maybe we could call them ambassadors, we could call them whatever you want, but they circulate downtown, particularly in the more heavy tourist areas, and they just let people know what the policies are. You know, if they're, remind them to social distance, remind them to wear masks. And we even have masks that we've bought through the city that they could hand out. So that might be an idea. I don't have all the answers. I know there's a lot of other great ideas out there, but it'd be interesting to have this conversation going forward, because I think we're going to be in this state for a while with the way that the numbers are going. So that's all I have to say. I agree with Paula's ideas. Signage, it might be fun to have an artist kind of competition to come up with a Glenwood centered poster about wearing face masks and make it fun and keep it positive. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Deborah, did you want to talk or did you have your hand up? I didn't lower your hand last time. Okay. Steve Davis, you're unmuted.
There you go. Good evening. I as well agree that fun and creative signs I think would be good downtown. I think it's important to let everybody know, and the Ped Bridge would be a great place for that. I also continue to be an advocate for private security. I think just because our budget is reduced doesn't mean that we completely defund security in this town. I think that we should have private security down along Bethel Plaza and the downtown area Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 to 9. That 6-hour schedule seems to work well, and I think fits the minimum time for hiring private security. I didn't realize that we had decided not to do that. I don't think that I've missed any meetings. I know it was coming, but then it never showed up. And I think we are suffering for it. I couldn't help but notice I had to travel to Colorado Springs and back this week. And both Frisco and Breckenridge have completely closed their main streets for several blocks with a detour around it. And that seems to really work well for helping crowd control. I think we should continue to consider or readdress the possibility of closing 7th Street as well. I know that seems to be a hot topic, but I don't understand how a town like Breckenridge and Frisco can do it successfully, and it's completely unacceptable to Glenwood. It really has helped control their crowd.
Steve, I think I lost you. Your frame is frozen up, so I will assume you were done talking. But if you weren't, raise your hand again when you get back online. We'll go to Tony right now. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. I think a slogan or something would be great, like I'd rather wear a mask than a ventilator or something, but maybe not. That's not so funny. My one concern is, and I'm going to be bringing this up at the next meeting about infrastructure, and I'm going to ask that one of you consider having this placed on the agenda given the recent water main break. I've never heard of an issue. You know, John Adams had to force the Continental Congress in 1776, and we're coming up on that anniversary, to actually debate the issue. And he said, you know, is there an issue so scary we can't even talk about it? And I sincerely hope that the mayor was misquoted in the Post-Independent, but he said it's not going to be on the agenda. I can't think of an issue more important. We have to keep our streets safe. We have to keep our streets clean. We have to keep them repaired. And when I say streets, I don't mean paving Blake Avenue or paving, you know, a street. I mean the infrastructure under the street. And if pipes are you know, many, many decades old and they burst, that creates, as we saw the other weeks or last week, serious issues. So I would ask, and nobody has to decide right now, and unlike Paul, I don't try to start a conversation in the middle of public comment. I would just like one of you to please email, and you can do it secretly. No, you can't. One of you to please email the city manager, and I would ask that to be added to an agenda in the future. Thank you.
Tony, just for clarification, what specifically would you like to address? Would you like us to address something? Would you like staff to have a report? What would be your idea?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan. I would like it placed on the agenda, aging infrastructure and what we're going to do with it. Nothing else matters right now. with well, obviously other things matter, but financially, I think we're in a terrible position. So I'd like to get a better sense of where we are. And if it's just one, me and one other person who'd like to add it to the agenda, we can talk about it and what the options are. That's all I'm asking, is to discuss it. But obviously I envision a staff report from Deborah and her staff and from Streets about maybe some problems. I did read a memo today, which was interesting, but I have serious concerns that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to continue to have these kind of issues, not just with water, but with electricity, with sewage. I know we're talking about broadband. When you're tearing up streets, the great thing about that is you replace all the infrastructure, and that's all I'd like to talk about, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. That helps clarify. Deborah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd asked Matt to be prepared to just briefly talk on this for the public, what had happened, and what we were doing to bring back to you guys options for fixing infrastructure, which is a rate increase that we currently have a study for. So if you'd like him to explain to the public what happened, now would be a good time.
Yeah, Matt, I'd love for you to jump on and give us a brief overview of the heroic actions and the late night that you had getting water back restored. So go ahead, Matt.
I don't know about heroic actions, but
oh, it was.
It's our job, so it didn't really affect us that much. That pipe is our 24-inch raw water system, and some people think raw water means sewer. It's actually the water that we take out of No Name and Grizzly Creek and transfer it all the way down and back up the hill again to our waste or our water plants on the side of Red Mountain over there. So that 24-inch pipe is one of our water sources that supplies the water plant with water that we process then and send it out to the city. I just want to make sure people understand what raw water is. It's not sewer, it's just river water. And out of Grizzly and No Name, it's some of the best water in the state probably. What happened was one section of the pipe between the trailhead for Red Mountain Trail and our water plant decided after 47 years, it decided it wanted to split in half. Happens, it's an older pipe. You get material defects, you get pressures, things shift in the ground a little bit here and there. We do live on the side of a hill. So that pipe decided to burst. The guys at the plant realized what happened. They actually heard quite a large explosion, started checking around, saw the tank levels in the canyon tanks was starting to drop because the canyon tanks push water to the water plant. So they were pushing water out of the tanks and into the broken pipe that then decided to flow down the hill. They figured it out quickly. They shut the system off. They shut off all the tank systems so that we had all the reserve water we needed. We were sitting on about 3.5, almost 4 million gallons of water at that moment. So the city went into water reserves just because, or restrictions, because we didn't know what it was, how long it was going to take us to fix it. And once the water plant is off in the summer, it's hard for us to catch back up when the tank levels start to drop because people are using a lot of water. For informational purposes for the public, in the winter, we use about 900,000 gallons of water in a day for the entire city. In the summertime, it can be up to 4.5 million gallons of water every single day. So there's a lot of irrigation water that's being used outside of just domestic water. But continue with the process. The pipe broke. Like I said, it was 40 plus years old. When we pulled it out of the ground, you couldn't have told me why that pipe broke. It was still in great condition. The covering was still great. The interior mortar liner was still great. There was just some kind of material failure associated with that piece of pipe, which actually happened within the first few months of this pipe being installed in 1976. Several sections of that pipe actually blew up at the trailhead down on West 9th Street right when they turned the thing on, basically. So, it can happen with brand new pipe. It can happen with pipe that's 44 years old. 400,000 gallons of water. He went down the road, destroyed part of the road, destroyed part of the trailhead, went into a couple people's garages. I think we have most of that cleaned up now. I'm going to go check on people. Probably not tomorrow. Well, maybe tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Just to make sure that everything's gotten cleaned up. We pulled the old pipe out. Replaced it with new pipe, new solid sleeves that the Hot Springs pool lent us a little piece of pipe. Eagle River Water and Sanitation lent a couple of parts just to make sure that at midnight we weren't short parts. We actually had enough. but we wanted to make sure that we weren't short parts at midnight. So put the pipe back together, turned it back on at about 11:30, 11:45 that night. And by the time the plant was full, the road backfilled again, and we were out of there around 2 a.m. or so. And then the next day we used those water restrictions to refill all the tanks within the city so that we made sure we were back up and ready to go for people to turn the sprinklers on. So maybe that was too much. Maybe that was not enough. Do you have questions?
Matt, how old was that pipe? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You broke up.
It was installed in 1976. So I guess it's 44 years old.
Ooh, the bicentennial. So it's almost exactly. I'm just kidding. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Matt?
Good work, Matt. You and your staff did a phenomenal job. I want to join the mayor and congratulate the staff for doing a great job.
Yes, staff literally dropped everything they were doing and started cleaning up within about 30 minutes. And we were procuring parts that we thought we may need, and everybody just banded together and we got everything done in a very organized fashion. So that was very impressive to see my staff do that.
Hey, Matt, what can be the expected life on a pipe like that? Is there a typical life or?
Well, that's an interesting question because I believe it's a class 51 DIP, which is a little less than we use now, class 52. Some people will say DIP will last, ductile iron pipe, sorry, will last you 25, 30 years. Some people will tell you in the good conditions, it'll last you 50 to 75 years. Every piece of that pipe that we've ever dug up, because we exposed it 6-7 times on 7th Street, which is the highest pressure area we have in town, probably closer to the most corrosive area that we have for that pipe. And every time we've ever dug it up, the pipe is in great condition. The coating is still on. Bells look really good. So I'm not saying it's perfect pipe by any means, but it's definitely seems to be in pretty good shape for the age that it's in. We are going to start having conversations internally about should we shut portions of that pipe down in a low flow season and start pressure testing it? Should we shut it down and empty it and start cameraing it? You know, we're going to have to start moving into a little bit heavier infrastructure review of that section of the pipe because it does supply the city with water. If it does go down between the Roaring Fork and call it Grizzly Creek, we have the Roaring Fork pump station we can back up on, and that will supply water for the city. And it's right at the Roaring Fork at 8th Street in Midland. Where the problem was the other day was the break was between the Roaring Fork pump station and the plant, which uses the exact same 24-inch line to get water up to the plant. So where it breaks between 8th Street and Midland and the plant, even with the Roaring Fork pump station. So we're going to have to start looking into, we've got cathodic protection on that pipe in areas where we know we have high corrosive soils, which helps balance that pipe corrosion out. But we're going to have to start looking at, hey, in the wintertime, let's shut this down, turn the pump station on, maybe open it up and start looking at the interior, start looking at the gaskets, those kinds of fun things, just to see where we're at in the life expectancy of that pipe. Get some professionals in here, some experts, and go from there. Does that answer your question? It's kind of hit or miss a little bit.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Any other questions for Matt?
Yeah, just quick, Matt. We also got some help, didn't we, from another municipality and a contractor in that time frame?
Well, I'd love to list everybody that called and offered parts and pieces. Carbondale, Aspen, Gould Construction is the one that actually let us know that they had leftover pipe sitting at the Hot Springs pool because they're the ones that installed everything at the Hot Springs pool. Chell and John and everybody over the Hot Springs let us that pipe. They're figuring out if they want us to pay them back for it or just replace it or whatever they want to do. We'll do whatever they need. Tony Zancanella was part of that process. I mean, it was a group effort. The second that people heard that the water line was down, we were almost fighting phone calls off to try to get the line back up. But it was a huge response. Like I said, we borrowed actually parts from Eagle River Water and Sanitation District. Our old water superintendent, Brad Zockman, called up immediately, said, I've got those parts sitting in the yard. The pool, Gould called and let us know that the pool had an extra piece of pipe, which was helpful. It was actually a better piece of pipe than we had sitting in the yard. So we used that one, obviously. And we are going back out right now and resupplying ourselves with pipe in fits, just in case it happens again. And these things happen. I mean,
Yes.
We had probably 6 or 7 water leaks this year. We have an older infrastructure, and I don't disagree with Tony that, man, infrastructure conversations, anytime you want to have it, I'll have it. It's not a pleasant conversation most of the time. So, yeah, but we had a lot of people outreach, I guess, is the answer to your question. And we really appreciated everybody reaching out, and it was good to see.
So ask not what your community can do for you, but ask what you can do for your community. That's kind of what I took out of all that help and cooperation we had. You know, Matt, and I also want to comment that not only did you do great work, I knew that you would just because of who you are, but I knew that we were in great hands when all of this happened. And it's not predictable, as you said. But there was a plan that you put together in 2019, in the early months of 2019, that addressed the city's infrastructure and roadways chiefly, but you know, it had like a $56 million price tag. And that was not approved by the voters. It was, I believe, 60-40. It was pretty overwhelming that they weren't going to do that. And so, you know, I am willing to second Councilman Hershey's idea that we should have a discussion about this, but I'd like it to be a discussion based on resources and looking at what's possible over a period of time. You know, we really lost a couple of years here in looking at that. And I would say that if we had sort of, you know, you brushing out your spreadsheet again, that would be a very handy thing to take a look at. And, you know, the best time to do that might not be now because we're not going to have an influx of a lot of money. But I just think educating people about what we're facing and what we're looking at, and the idea that the United States in general doesn't address its infrastructure. And it's usually the last thing that people think about until something like a pipe break would come along. So I just wanted to commend you for your work, and just to make that statement about, you know, this stuff doesn't just happen, and slogans don't fix infrastructure. Hard-headed thinking does, and you know, council people coming to the council with a proposal to do something, and not sitting on the sidelines. If there's a budget issue, we all went through the 2020 budget, this group in front of us, and I think that we did a good job in taking a look at the money that we have. We were able to borrow some money internally from reserves to do some badly needed street projects. But once we've done that, the hard-headed conversation is, what do we do next? And so I hope council would be amenable to really looking at all the alternatives that are out there when we have that discussion, and there's no sacred cows. So, but can I keep going with my council comments? If you haven't heard enough, and if anybody wants me to rip my internet out of the wall, I can do that too. But
I just wanted to say thank you, Rick, but then I'll shut up. Thank you.
So, you know, I want to say Cedar Crest is going great, Matt. It's looking wonderful up here. The neighborhood's very pleased with the work that Gould is doing, and I haven't heard of people being upset about maybe having the driveways blocked occasionally, and everybody's just sort of giddy about the idea of not having you know, that road to drive on anymore. It looks very smooth. The fiber optic, there's a lot of excitement there. People are wanting that, and I think it's really good to live in a neighborhood that has that. I know that, Matt, you're working hard, and other people in the electric department to roll that out citywide. And so there's a lot of really good forward-looking activities that the city's engaged in. Just two more things real quick. You know, I agree with Steve and Paula that we do need to have some sort of presence maybe downtown. You know, we can rely on people's goodwill, and we've done that so far. And there's been a few, very few sorts of incidents out there. But the problem is that those incidents with people who don't want to wear masks stick in people's minds, as opposed to the 95% of people who are doing it now. And I know that we'll have that in the mask conversation. So, you know, I'll save that as well. The last thing that I would say is I'm all for discussing the marijuana retail cap. That was a reason for my vote in a previous meeting, is that I think we need to have that discussion and come to some sort of agreement about what's enough for Glenwood Springs. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Steve Davis, I saw your hand go up briefly. Did you want to give additional comment? I know you got cut off earlier. No? Okay. I'll just give a couple of comments. I think, this, I appreciate, Tony, the conversation, wanting to have a conversation about infrastructure. I think it's a conversation that this council and the last council has been having for the last 3 years. It's a very complex, difficult, there's no simple answers. And I think the previous council found, with the advice and guidance of the Financial Advisory Board and the Transportation Commission, that it wasn't an issue about reallocating resources and just, not buying as many pencils. It was a question about how we acquire more resources to be proactive, so we don't have burst pipes. For the public out there that's attending, we have 17 attendees. Right now, primarily, we are not doing reconstruction street projects when streets are in bad or failing shape. We are doing street reconstruction projects because the utilities under are failing in a significant way. And when that happens, we're like, well, if we're going to tear up the street to repair 2/3 of the utilities, let's bring everything up to speed and rebuild the street. That is why Cedar Crest is getting done. Cedar Crest is getting done because we could not even pressure test the water lines, and we could not ensure that the residents up there would be able to turn on a fire hydrant, or the fire department would come out for the residents and turn on a fire hydrant, and we'd be able to put out a fire at their home. So it's more than just nice streets. It is about health and life and safety. And Councilor Voorhees is right. We robbed money from reserves. That's what reserves are from. But we also took money from other sources to accomplish our goals. And a big one was Cedar Crest this year. Cedar Crest is one street in one neighborhood in one town. We're going to have a conversation. This council is about resources. And so I'm happy to put that on a future agenda and have that conversation and start to dig in and have Steve Boyd and Matt Langhorse give us probably the exact same presentation they gave us, 18 months ago. But if it's the same presentation, then because not much has probably changed. That's my comment on that. I'd also second Councilor Voorhees' discussion. I wanted to have it at this meeting about a cap on retail marijuana license. I and Shelley and Rick have been a part of 3 marijuana applications. Councilor Davis has been a part of far more than that. We have currently 9 licensed and 7 active retail marijuana shops in town. And the last 2 prior to this one, I don't know if it was because of the location, but had almost no comment from the public of saying this is enough is enough, the kids, whatever. We heard none of that. So it's interesting to hear it now on this specific application. And I just have to think that maybe it's a location issue and maybe not a number issue. I don't know, but I would love to have more conversation about that. I think the most appropriate way to deal with this, though, it is a land use application. I think having the Planning and Zoning Board take this up and have a determination on it, so to give us advice would be helpful. I would also suggest, transitioning to my next thing, that I would like to see our Planning and Zoning Board be as much planning as they are zoning. We have a lot of great individuals on that board. And I think that too often their agenda is just to interpret code. And I think that we lose out when they're not, we either give them something to interpret and to discuss and then to make recommendations. But I think that's a group of people for the first half hour or hour of every meeting should be talking and being proactive about putting things in front of us that they, as experts in the field and as our volunteer committee, should be advising. So I guess I would suggest that to whoever the, well, we don't have necessarily a council liaison, but whoever the staff liaison is to planning and zoning, that I just want to encourage the head of Marco Diem, who's a board chair, to maybe make it more. Go ahead, Charlie.
I agree with you, Jonathan, but I think that maybe a place to start would be have a meeting, a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and have that discussion among the two, us and that board, and talk about what we might want them to change, if we want them to change kind of the scope of where they're going.
I think that's great. I think the sooner the better. I think we have, a ton of applications that have come before us that I feel like we're reacting to, and I think we need to have that conversation. So as soon as I guess that would be the next, as time allows, that'd be the next joint board and commission meeting I'd like to see from this council. That's all I have for comments. Any other council comments? Okay, seeing none, I will try to find the agenda somewhere in my computer. There we go.
That attendee came back that we lost, Ricky Ricardo. He's back with his hand up. I just didn't know if you want to give him a chance.
Oh, yeah, we'd lost Ricky before. He had his hand up during public comment. Ricky, if this is about the face mask, we are going to be discussing that, I believe, next. So I'll allow you to talk, and you can just let me know if this is something that you want to address. If it's face mask, just literally probably wait 2 minutes, and if it's about something else, then we'll allow it. So go ahead, Ricky.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to address that. Well, on 7th Street, you guys did a really good job on making that. It's very popular. I actually enjoy going down there. But once you leave 7th Street, it's like a ghost town. And we have on 8th, between 8th and 9th, we have 4 other restaurants. I was wondering if we could get a little bit of love and maybe get some signing pointing that there's more restaurants up on the next block. So that's pretty much all I had.
Thanks, Ricky. I appreciate it. And I think I've seen Ricky more the last couple of weeks than I've seen some of my members of my own family. So it's fun running into you downtown. But Deborah, go ahead. You respond to that.
Point out that on your agenda is staff is asking you, I believe, to waive sign codes. And so that would be one of the reasons why is, to give restaurants more flexibility on advertising. And yes, I'm sure we are glad to put up signs telling people there are more businesses.
Thank you.
That is very serendipitous. All right, thank you very much for the comments, Ricky. We will bring it back.
I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm just trying to help you out.
No, I was scrolling through all my open windows.
I'm looking at the printed copy of the agenda, which I recommend.
That's a really great idea. All in favor, signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Please note that everybody either said aye or raised their hand, and all opposed, please indicate by saying nay or big old thumbs down. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next item is item number 9, face coverings. Is there, I'm not suspecting there is, but is there a presentation from staff on this?
I will just say, not a formal presentation, but thank you all very much for listening in your listening session, which we hope gave you good background to help make whatever decision it is you're about to make. And thank you for the community for participating. I think we had over 400 people either on the line or on the computer. So that's probably one of our best attended meetings ever outside of Don't Strip Glenwood.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Deborah, for putting that together in pretty short order. It was great to have the community to participate like that. I want to thank Janess, the facilitator, and everybody that participated. It was good. I think we're going to have a couple more community conversations like that coming up. I believe one of the next ones, if not the next one, is our Latinx community and how we are integrating and interfacing with them. We will be promoting that here pretty shortly when some of those things get dialed. So thank you again for everybody that participated. All right, so we are on a face mask conversation. We were going to, I suggested last time we have it at every meeting, at least a check-in. And I guess we should, since we don't usually have a formal presentation from staff, and then we take public comment, and then we have our conversation. So since we don't have a formal presentation, I'll go right to public comment. Monica Wolney, I believe you wanted to speak and comment on this, and we reserved your comments. So yeah, go ahead, Monica. You're unmuted. I think. There you go.
Hey, Mr. Goetz, can you hear me?
I can perfectly, thanks.
Awesome. So in regards to this, it really has nothing to do with face masks in general, but with the emergency powers. So in regards to the Public Health Order number 2, Series 2020, requiring the closure of lodging and now requiring face masks. I see the city is complying with Colorado Revised Statute 31-15-401B in Glenwood Municipal Code 100.010 and .010, appointing City Manager Deborah to act as a health officer that leads the emergency powers for Glenwood Springs, and which is a home rule. Although, what I'm not seeing is the local public health agencies are required by statute, state statute 25-1-508 CRS to either hire a doctor to lead the local public health agency, or if not a doctor, then they must hire a medical advisor. And if you go into section 25-1-508 5C CRS, so it is possible that the county can appoint someone other than a physician to lead the agency, but they must employ and contract with a medical officer for advice. So I actually requested a CORA earlier this week from the city of Glenwood Springs, in which came back stating that they hold no record, calls or emails of hiring or contracting a medical advisor or a physician. Which brings me to how are these emergency powers closing down lodging or mandating these masks now, or shall I say the Public Health Order number 2, Series 2020, in compliance with the state statute 25-1-508. I see that there is some things that you guys, and I mean, I'd love for you guys to correct me on it, but I'd love to see where I don't see you guys following state statute on this emergency power. And if this is the case, this should be nulled and voided. That is my comment. So I'd like some clarification.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it. Carl Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a bit of confusion. Title 25 does in fact apply to county public health organizations. And Monica is absolutely correct on that. The powers that you utilized in issuing the public health order through your code actually reside in 31-15-401B, which says you can do all acts and makes all such regulations which may be necessary or expedient for the promotion of health or the suppression of disease. And that was the decision. You'll recall at that meeting, you guys had a lengthy discussion over this before implementing those 2 measures. So in the municipal code section that was cited, it does provide that health officer either can be a medical professional or the city manager can appoint somebody else in that role. In this instance, obviously we didn't have one in place, and so that falls to the city manager, as does a number of those types of things in our code when there's not a separate appointment. Statewide, municipalities have been operating under 31-15-401 with similar orders in municipalities all across the state. So I'm comfortable that the city had the authority to enter the order that it did. There again, it is not a county public health organization, which is governed by CRS 25. And in fact, that was one of those things that when we entered this order, I had a specific conversation with the county attorney, making sure that we were not stepping into their section of the statutory authority, because that is their purview under Title 25, not ours. We operate under Title 31.
Well, that was completely clear and understandable. Thank you, Carl. I'm glad we have two attorneys on our board that probably understood what most of that meant. But from what my takeaway is that we do have the authority to do it. And I guess I would just respond briefly to Ms. Wolney, is that we have made a lot of our decision based on public health guidance from the county, from the CDC, from CDPHE, and they all employ doctors and epidemiologists. And so the public powers that we've given our city manager have also been based on the understanding that she's also looking to those expert agencies, local, state, and national. We are back on council comments on face mask ordinance. We got Charlie, Paula, and Shelley. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thanks. First of all, I didn't comment during council comments about signs and things like that. But I think that concept is not only important, but we should be doing. A couple of things I've heard is that some of the businesses feel like we put them in the middle of this, and we have to remember that most of the rules to deal with the businesses come from the governor, not from us. As far as having to have masks by the employees and things within the shops themselves, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be cognizant of the issues that are being created to shop owners and restaurant owners who are getting confronted by people who do not believe in the face mask concept. Hannah and our staff has put together a couple of really good signs, I think. I had some conversation with her and Deb earlier in the week when we got a comment from one of our restaurant owners about, they need signs that say it's the city of Cleveland Springs. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Those signs both say, this is our rule, this is what we're going to do. So I would like to, encourage, and I don't think we need to make a motion based on what Deborah said a little while ago, they're waiting kind of for our direction, but just encourage city staff to get some more signs out there. I think Steve Davis commented on this too. We need signs on the pedestrian bridge, probably in the elevator, in the various places up Bethel Plaza and up and down Grand Avenue and on 8th Street. And I guess there's not much on 9th Street, but at least on 8th Street. Make sure people are aware of what the local rules are, and there are rules that we've instituted as far as mandatory face masks if you can't social distance. The other thought that I had, and Shelley had the same thought because we chatted about this briefly yesterday, and that's getting ambassadors or somebody out in the street with a bag, a shopping bag full of masks. We've got 8,000, I think Deborah said we used 2,000 of them of the 10 we ordered, and we get more. But we go up and offer that to the people that are out there. The problem with that is, and this gets into the security issue that Steve mentioned earlier, is there isn't any funds for that. And if we have officers on furlough, I don't think we go out and start hiring security people, even though I'd love to be able to do it. Because I agree with Steve, it'd be nice to have that out there. But I think we need to keep in mind our staff is important there. All that being said, I've read a lot over the last 2 weeks since the last city council meeting. I think read it quite a bit before that. It's pretty clear to me that the science is evolving and being fairly clear and fairly uniform, that face masks do reduce the spread of the COVID-19. Dr. Brooks in the meeting on Monday or Tuesday, that the open discussion talked about the multiplier factor. I thought that was really astounding when you talk about what that could be. With that said, I would move that we extend the mandatory face mask for 1 month until the first meeting in August. I don't see there's going to be any major change between now and 2 weeks from now. So I think we do it in a month. If something changes and the world opens up and we get a vaccine or something else the next 2 weeks, then we could look at it. But I would move that we extend it until the first meeting in August.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. Further conversation, Paula.
I appreciate what Charlie said, and and I do feel that looking at where we are right now and after having a community conversation and the discussions that were there, and that we're seeing a rise in cases in Garfield County, that we're being prudent by protecting our community. And I think in the long run, it's much better for our economy, because if we can take these precautions right now, then we can keep our businesses open. And I think that's our job as council, is to move this forward slowly so that we can get back to some economic viability. And we can only do that by doing this cautiously and asking people who visit our community and live in our community to take this precaution with us. So Shelley beat me to it, but I second what Charlie was saying, and let's do all that we can to keep our businesses open in the best way that we can possibly do it, which is taking these precautions.
Thanks, Paula. Shelley.
I agree with everything that Paula just said, so I won't repeat it, but I will add that, you know, we want to proceed cautiously here because we want to see an economic recovery in Glenwood Springs, and we want to see an economic recovery for our tourism industry especially. And in light of that, we welcome visitors from all over the country, and that's who comes here this year. On a typical year, we have visitors from all over the world. This year, though, they're from all over the country, and there are a lot of spikes in cases going on in different parts of the country. So if we want to welcome those visitors, we want to not only keep them safe as possible, we want to keep our community and our residents and our businesses, our employees, or those frontline employees who live here, as safe as possible. So I think this is a really important measure to keep in place. And I fully support it. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Rick, then Tony. Rick, you're muted. There you go.
There we
You're
go.
good. You're good.
Thank
You're
you.
good.
You know, I think that we're on the right runway, that we got on the right runway back in March when we first started talking about this, and circumstances have certainly shifted. This afternoon, Texas announced that it was going to have a statewide mandatory mask mandate. I don't know, mandatory mandate, that's, you know, the same word said twice, but and Pennsylvania. And and I don't think that these are decisions that states are making willy-nilly. We've spiked 82% over the last 2 weeks nationally. And we're on the road up here too. And so it is all about helping our businesses stay safe. And I would also say that, at least in my intelligence gathering, that the state tourism office has gotten no complaints when they've been asked about face masks. And our own tourism group run by the chamber, when they explain things to people, have gotten a little pushback as well. And so I think it's really a selling point for tourists to know that they're coming to a town that takes their health seriously, and the health of people who are helping them enjoy the town seriously. So I'm going to support the motion. I'm also going to ask if this is something that we're going to do every month, do you think? And, you know, I'm fine with that, but if the timeline's a month, that works here too. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. And I believe the motion was, Charlie mentioned a month. So if that was the understanding of the motion, then we either need an amendment or clarification. Charlie, what was your intent?
The motion was basically a month, but the first meeting in August. So we have a definitive time when we're gonna meet and have a meeting. So I don't know if that's exactly your month or what that is, but to the first meeting in August.
Perfect. Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Councilor Hershey.
Am I still muted, Mr. No, no. I was wondering, might be a crazy idea, Charlie, or maybe Deborah or Carl, but I saw in another town, like, you know how we have doggy bag stations? Since we don't have anyone to give them out, I saw, it wasn't in Colorado, I think it was in Arizona, they were distributing masks like in a dispenser, or is that just a crazy idea? Just putting it out there. Thank you.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, Tony, I think it'd be a great idea. My concern there would be is people would take a bunch of masks and they'd either resell them or do something else. So I think handing them out if we can, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to do it. I like the idea. Just that's my concern about just having them sit in a basket somewhere.
Then on the alternative, like give them to restaurants. So if somebody says, I want to come to dinner here I know that the owner of Juicy Lucy's was complaining about some compliance. He has some, we've given him, his staff could hand them out, or somebody, or they could have them. I know they have them at the chamber, but people aren't there and it's not open all the time. But restaurants that have them at night would be helpful, maybe. I don't know.
So I think Deborah can speak on this, but I believe we've ordered 10,000 to distribute to them. I think we have another 10,000 we've ordered, and we have. Go ahead, Deborah. You tell us what we're doing. I'm fumbling through this.
Then let them sell it.
10,000. We've given 2,000 away. The chamber has them, and we're giving them to businesses that ask for them, and 100 per ask. We can certainly do more. But yeah, no, we ordered them, in fact, to give them away.
And, you know, Tony, my only concern, I think you mentioned it, or maybe Charlie did, is we like 60 days ago had a worldwide PPE crisis, and we didn't have a toilet paper crisis. And you saw the run on toilet paper, which was just crazy. So if you actually put actual PPE out there, a face mask, surgical mask, or whatever, I would agree with Charlie that I think we would have people just grabbing it up and just in case. So I think that's probably smart to potentially have the distribution channels we do of if restaurants want them, they are there for the asking. Go ahead, Charlie.
I think I was just looking at our attendees. Looks like we have some people from the press there, and anything you can do to let the public and the businesses know that we do have masks available. We'll be happy to get them there. And if they can't get over and get them, let me know. I'll go get them from City Hall and I'll take them to the businesses. You know, I'm sure other council members would do the same. We really do want to support the businesses in this very tough time. And it's not, and they're the frontline people right now when it comes to the tourists in town and not wanting to do this because they don't think it's appropriate. And I think it's an educational thing. The more we can do, the better. Thanks.
Paula.
I know quite a few people are volunteering throughout the county on how can people want to help out. So maybe it's something we talk to the chamber about, seeing if we can get volunteer ambassadors and seeing if that's something that they would work with us on, or the DDA, just kind of people want to help out. So I would say, let's put it out there and see if we can get some people scheduled. Maybe Steve has some ideas on that as well.
Paula, I talked to Angie this morning, Angie Anderson from the chamber, and when they did the ambassadors for the bridge, I thought there was volunteers, but they had hired those people. You know, she's happy to try to help see if we get some volunteers as well, but they're like everyone else, they're short staffed and everything else right now. So yeah.
People do want to help though, so this is a different time.
I told Deborah a couple of days ago, if she gave me a cool looking polo that looked bright, I would stand out there for however long they needed and I would hand them out. So I'm sincere in that. So if it's I mean, I have a job and a family. I'm not going to give it 40 hours, but yeah, I'd be happy to take a shift, and I would be happy to wear whatever cool polo is going to be. And you know, if anybody else wanted to join me in that, whether it be the chamber, the DDA, or the city who organized that, I think that could be a cool thing.
Yeah. If you make it tie-dye, I'll do it.
There we go.
Steve Davis.
You know, I just want to say I do spend some time standing around downtown retail, and we picked up 100 masks from the chamber and we've tried to give them away. But the reality is, at this point in time, I don't see anybody that doesn't have a mask. Everybody that walks in the door has a mask on. That occasional person that we have stroll in without a mask and we'll say, hey, here, you want a mask? They'll go, no, I've got one. They pull it out of their pocket and put it on. So it's not like, you know, there's a rush on them at this point in time. And we have in fact, no pushback at all. You know, I think initially we had a little resentment towards it, but at this point in time, everybody gets it. I don't care where you go.
Thanks, Steve. And I guess I'd say I'll give my comments. I think that the science is pretty undisputable on this. I know everybody can go to the University of YouTube and find somebody that disagrees with the science, but that's not a valid place to go for your information. I think that the thing that I have heard from a number of business owners is that they feel frustrated because there's an inconsistency. And I made mention about it at the listening session because I'd heard it by several business owners that day, where someone will come in to a hotel and say, I don't have to do this because I was just at this restaurant and they told me I didn't have to do it and no one was going to enforce this. And so that hotel owner is now having to be the bad guy. Conversely, restaurateur will have somebody come in and say, my hotel said I didn't really have to wear it. It's not a big thing and I don't need to take it seriously. And then that restaurateur has to be the bad guy. And I think that puts our community at odds with each other and our business community at odds with each other. So I guess as an encouragement, I would like to I'd like to encourage all the business owners that every time you do that, every time you don't comply with either the state health order, like we heard a comment of a paint store where 2 employees were not wearing, that's a state health order. That has nothing to do with Glenwood Springs. But every time you do that, you allow your employees to be lax. Every time you tell people, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Every time someone comes in and goes, I have asthma, I'm not going to wear it. The governor has given authority to any public serving restaurant retailer to demand that people wear the face covering. So you have that authority and that power under law. And I think that it would be a lot less frustrating for your other fellow business owners if it was applied more evenly. And I know the city of Aspen just yesterday or 2 days ago started to criminalize businesses that didn't enforce in their premise face coverings. And I think it's, I think it's 15 days where you'd lose your liquor license if they don't. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we need to be there. I hope not. But, I think it is something that, we do ask businesses to have a baseline responsibility when it comes to, for example, restaurants, not over serving individuals, making sure that individuals are over the age of 21, not, doing different things. And I don't know, I think an overwhelming number of our businesses, the overwhelming majority are doing it the right way and doing the right thing. And I think probably the few that aren't are maybe doing it because they don't have clarity on the rules. And the rules sometimes are changing. It's a moving goalpost. So I have a lot of sympathy for them. But I guess to get back to, the motion that's on the table, I would support this initiative or this motion because I think it is pro-business. I think it's a way to keep our businesses going, keep our economy going, and also protect the health of our citizens and visitors alike. So unless there are any other comments, Catherine, please call roll.
Godus,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Voorhees.
It's going through this mute thing again, huh? Wow. Okay, I think you've got to unmute me.
No, you are unmuted.
Oh, I am unmuted. Okay, my vote is yes.
Okay.
Cope,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thanks,
Rick, I
everybody.
think
Wow.
it's the headphones you have there, Rick, I think you're having trouble with those.
Squeezing your head too much.
I must look a little bit like Bonzo or something here.
While we're still on face coverings, I would like to suggest, Rick gave me that article about the governor of Texas, who has been experiencing a premature reopening, quick reopening of the economy, and they're getting killed in Texas. No pun intended, actually, at all. They're getting lit up with COVID. Same with Florida, and actually, I think the nuance, Rick. It's not a statewide order in Texas. It's any county with more than 20 cases, which would absolutely apply to Garfield County and probably most of the counties in Colorado. And I think that I have been incredibly impressed and proud of our governor and the leadership he's exhibited. And I think that he is a national model, actually, and gets talked about in both liberal and conservative circles as this is how you want to do it. And so what I'm about to suggest is maybe, you're doing great, Governor Polis, but here's how you can do a little better. And I guess would there be any support about sending a letter requesting from this council, requesting that the governor make that even more consistent and make it a statewide order? Would anybody be supportive of this council taking that action to send the governor that letter? I see 2, 3, 4, 5 thumbs up. 6, 7. If it's okay to have staff draft a letter of request or support and have me sign it, then we don't have to wait 2 weeks to get that out. Is everybody okay with allowing Carl and Deborah to take the lead on that and have me sign that? Okay. Paul, was that a thumbs up or I had a question?
No, that's a thumbs up.
You have very elegant thumbs. It looked like your pointer finger. All right. Thank you for that. Is there anything else for the good of the order about face masks? All right. Next item, participation in a coordinated election to degallegarize. Carl, maybe?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, no worries.
Well, no, like when you do it, and then I have to click the box anyway.
Oh, because I'm requesting you. So is that the deal where I'm requesting you to unmute? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, this is actually really straightforward. You guys had a great presentation at a work session at the last meeting. Really, the only action we need you to take tonight is to say whether you want to reserve space on the ballot because it's your intent to probably put a question on. We don't have that question or questions drafted yet. I think Steve went over with you at the work session the last time. We really have 3 mill levies in town that would be affected by it. That's fire, GID, and we have a general mill. So this is really just notifying the county clerk that we intend to participate with the ballot question or questions on the 2020 coordinated election. So if that's what you guys would like to do, I just need a quick motion to that effect, and we can crank on through the agenda.
Charlie, do you have a question and or a motion?
I got a question from Carl. Carl, there's going to be a statewide ballot question on this that the legislature passed. What would we be doing in the election? That's what my question was. I thought
our question would be really it would come into effect if the state one didn't pass. So it's kind of a backup question, if you will. So you know, I would like to, yeah. I would like to think that hopefully the statewide one will pass so people understand the importance of it. It's always tough on statewide issues. So these would be probably 3 very specific questions since there are 3 different mill levies if you decided to do all 3 to degallegarize.
And would this include the fire district?
Well, the fire district needs to make that decision themselves, but they don't want to go forward unless you guys do as well. And keeping in mind that if you don't do it now, essentially what we'd be doing is would be saying that your revenues wouldn't go below what they are today, which would mean that essentially that ratio would stay the same. If you don't do this or it doesn't pass and the statewide one doesn't pass, I think then we're going to see the consequence of that would probably be that ratchet down effect that you guys talked about at the work session, which is going to be fairly debilitating when that residential property tax assessment percentage drops below 6%, it's going to be really debilitating for fire districts, school districts, anybody who's relying on property tax, since the residential property tax valuations have gotten so high in the state.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be ready to make a motion, but I think Tony might have a question. So I'll
You
wait.
know, and this is something we should probably open to public comment as well. So before we had the motion, we'll hold that.
Okay.
Can I ask, Tony, can I just jump in real quick? Because it's based off something Charlie said. Carl, can you just explain from what your understanding is, and you know, if you don't have a great understanding, that's fine. But what happens if, what is the difference between the state or the impact from the statewide question and our local question? What if the state passes, ours fails? What if we pass, the state fails? What if we both pass?
All right, so something simple. So if the statewide one passes, it basically returns to the legislature the responsibility to determine that ratio, which is currently set at no more than 45% of revenue can come from residential property tax, is statewide. So that would return that responsibility for determining how that ratio works to the legislature. So that's what would happen in that case. If it passes, then that happens. If ours, which would essentially say revenues won't drop below what the current rate is, both could coexist, because in the unlikely event that the legislature ratcheted it down even farther, ours would not drop any farther, at least underneath the Gallagher Amendment. Arguably, if the Gallagher Amendment were overturned in the election, then our question wouldn't relate to an active constitutional amendment, so it would probably have no meaning ultimately. There might be a gap between when the two took effect that would be important to us. If ours fails and the state fails, you're going to have to address a really large funding gap in both your fire department, primarily because your fire district that you have an IGA with to provide fire services both inside and outside of Glenwood. More of that is they're going to have less revenues to try to help support fire services. That's probably the biggest local immediate impact if both fail. If the state passes and ours fails, then we're waiting to hear what the legislature does. Did that cover all of them?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I appreciate that. That helps clarify things for me anyway. Tony, you're next, and then Paula.
I have a rhetorical mayor question. Can one of you tell me how much individual property taxes are going to go up if Gallagher passes? I am not going to support this. I think one of the reasons Colorado is so attractive is because of Tabor and Gallagher, and governments need to spend within their means. But before we go willy-nilly down these trails, all this does is shift the tax burden from tourists, which I would be fine if the state wants to raise the sales tax, to individual residents in this community, which will have a ripple effect on rents and house prices that is going to be a disaster. So I'll have more to say about Gallagher as we get closer to the election, but this is I think it may or may not pass on the state level, but I see no reason why we need to address it. Thank you.
That was a great comment disguised as a question, Councilor Hershey. I don't know if you actually were sincere and that you wanted us to address that, or
well, like you asked a bunch of questions last week that were clearly had answers to them from the CDC. So my question is, nobody knows how much. I'll answer my own question. No one knows how much property taxes will go up if this passes. So we should be very cautious. My property taxes are high enough. I don't want to pay any more tax, but I guess we'll leave it to the will of the voters in the state.
Yeah, and I guess my question in response to that question would be, how business unfriendly do we want to make this community and others throughout the state? Because right now, commercial property owners are, like Councilor Davis, are getting just lambasted every time there's a property tax. The hammer is coming down on Councilor Davis. And I know he agrees with me.
Cost that he passes on to tourists, not to residents. So again, just be cautious what you would like to see. What we need is more businesses But Gallagher and Tabor have worked pretty well for 40 years. I'm not looking to mess with it.
I'm still asking my hypothetical question about how bad do we want the hammer to come down on commercial businesses and hurt our actual businesses. So that was just my question, because we're in the question stage right now. So Paula, do you have a question?
I have a couple. One, I think we asked when Matt gave that presentation last week, he said that part of that proposal on the state level was the legislature would incrementally show some kind of incremental adjustment over time so that the residential people were not totally thrown under the bus. But I don't know that for sure. And it would be worth a discussion or something from Carl on clarification. But if you're clarifying that, could you also clarify if the Gallagher amendment, if we pass this Gallagher amendment change, would it also have to go before Tabor when they make the adjustment for property tax?
That's actually an interesting question. The second one, as to the first one, I honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know, Paula, because I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I didn't know we were going to have this detailed of a discussion. So I apologize for that on the state question. So from the standpoint, from our question standpoint, what you're saying is the revenues won't go down from where they are. So you're not asking for a revenue increase, which would trigger a Tabor question.
Okay.
Because that's the trigger in Tabor's if you're asking for a revenue increase. This is simply saying you're not going to allow revenues to drop below the current level.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Any other questions for staff? All right, seeing none, I will open it to public comment. Monica, go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Goetz. So I really don't believe we need to go into a city. The city should have nothing to do with this. It's going into the state. I think the only reason we are in this predicament is that non-residential that makes up 55% of the value has gone down because it's not only commercial properties. It makes 55% makes up a ratio, also including fossil fuels and minerals such as gas and oil. And we all know by shutting those down and then bringing them back up and then shutting them back down, there's no consistency. If we had kept those up, we would not be in this predicament. If we voted to remove Gallagher and freeze the taxes for 4 to 5 years at 7.15% for residential and 29% for commercial, what happens in year 5, 6, or 7? Legislature will be able to change the tax rate at whatever percentage they want. And I mean, if you look at Prop CC that was voted down, so now we are going after Gallagher. After that will go down, after that, what's next? Tabor. Instead of people's vote, legislature will be able to spend people's property money, tax money, wherever they want. Just remember what happened in California when they got rid of their form of Tabor and they voted to remove it. And look what that did to them. I believe in keeping Gallagher and revising it, but I believe as a business owner, I think that as a city level, we should not even touch it. I believe that leave it to state, let the people vote on it. But I believe in keeping Gallagher and and keeping our tax money anywhere. Nobody has ever trusted legislature to keep our taxes low or do anything like that. I mean, and we're going to put everything in the hands of, the government to do whatever they want at, 5, 6, 7 years down the line.
All right. Thank you, Monica. Is there any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back now, I think, Charlie, for a potential motion you were about to make earlier.
I would move that we authorize staff to advise the county clerk recorder that we may be on the ballot and participate in this issue And I'd like to make a brief comment, but I'll let a second first. So.
I'll second.
I guess I'm sorry.
Moved by Charlie, seconded by Paula. Further comment? Go ahead, Charlie.
Sorry.
No problem.
I appreciate what Monica just said. I think it's one of the things that is just going on right now. The big debate on how do we finance. I talked earlier about infrastructure and things like that. How do we finance things in a fair and equitable way? And I don't know that we have all the answers to that, but I think it's almost universal. I mean, the Gallagher Amendment, the state legislature passed by a supermajority, which included both Republicans and Democrats, because they're realizing after the X number of years that Gallagher's been around, I don't remember how many that is anymore, but it isn't working. And so the idea is we're trying to fix it. We're not trying to impose a lot of new taxes on people or things like that. We're trying to fix it so that our things like fire departments and other special districts, that sewer and water districts and things like that, don't get just killed and they can't afford to provide basic services. That's what we're trying to do. So I know it's going to be an ongoing debate. Just one other side comment. Thank you all for helping me get on the CML board. It's an issue that we're going to be discussing at the CML board level at our next meeting, which is next Friday. So, I brought it up because they didn't vote. They didn't take a position when it was in the legislature because it came up so quickly. But I think there's going to be sentiment of supporting that at the CML level too. So.
Thanks, Charlie, and congratulations, by the way, to being elected to that position. And we really appreciate you running for that. And we're anxious and excited for you to be serving Glenwood Springs' interests on that CML board. Shelley, go ahead.
Okay. Charlie covered some of what I was going to say. It's my understanding of the bill that will be on the ballot, and maybe Carl can correct this, but it's not basically doing away with Gallagher. What it's doing is it's changing that 55-45 ratio and allowing the state to adjust that formula with a 5-year period to figure out what a good formula is to adjust those tax ratios between commercial and residential. And having, as someone who has a small commercial property as well as residential properties, the tax difference is devastating. And if even just having a small commercial property, the tax rate on those properties is massive compared to the size of the buildings. So it's worth considering. And I'd also like to just point out, we had this discussion earlier about infrastructure and trying to repair infrastructure and repair roads and streets. And people like to argue against taxes and maybe make the government look like the bad guys, but the government is who supplies roads that you can drive on, that everybody can drive on equitably. It supplies fresh water. It takes care of your sewer when you flush your toilet, so it has somewhere to go and it doesn't pollute the river. It supplies the power to your home. That's what not only your fees and utility payments, but taxes have to help pay for a lot of that infrastructure. And if we want better roads and we want better infrastructure in our state, maybe that's not directly related to Gallagher, but taxes in general and being able to fund those things. No one else is going to do that and build that for our state and our communities except the government. That's how things work. So I will wholeheartedly support this.
All right. Any other comments? Catherine, please call the roll.
Willman,
Yes.
Kaup,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Stepp,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Godus.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Item number 11, Resolution 2024, resolution of the City Council of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, temporarily suspending portions of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Section 070040110 relating to temporary signs. The Ricky Rodriguez question. Who's up?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to present resolutions 2020-24, which would temporarily suspend portions of the sign code during the local emergency and up to 120 days. It would be specifically for the directional signs, temporary directional signs. They're that kind of small campaign style signs that can be located in the planting strip. There's an amount of time that they can be out, so up to a week before an event like the farmers market. And so this would suspend that time and duration. So duration and size, and then also banners. This would suspend size, location, and location of the banners. Businesses are allowed one banner up to 36 square feet, but this resolution would not allow for the banners to be above the roof line or in the site triangle. With that, I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Questions for Jen? Steve.
Would this address the Carver issue or question, Jen?
So there is a business in town at the Hotel Denver. They would like to have more than one banner. And so we have been sort of not regularly enforcing some of the sign code, but this would allow for the actual application that we have related to banners. So we did get one complaint, and so this would allow that to be applied equally, so businesses could apply for more than one banner on their business to promote, their outdoor dining or, other information about the business, and also the campaign style signs are kind of, intended for like the market and that kind of application.
So then the answer to my question is yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jen, I didn't hear it, but I know Shelley and I have suggested, and I don't know if it's a P&Z issue, but the LED Las Vegas signs that are like lit up. This temporary lifting of some of our rules doesn't apply to those LED signs and the constant movement, does it?
It's just for these temporary, let me look for the actual term of art.
You can just say no.
Temporary off-premise directional signs and temporary banners only.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions for staff? All right, see none. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, no, I was anticipating.
This is, I believe, it's a resolution, but is there anybody in attendance who would like to make public comment on this? See none. Go ahead, Charlie.
I move we approve resolution 2020-24, temporarily suspending portions of the sign code related to temporary signs. The comment that is great help to the business.
I'll second.
Been moved by Charlie. Tony sneaked in. Snake that seconded from you, Steve.
Second, I don't care.
All right, then he's the first, a second to Steve. So moved by Charlie, seconded by Steve. It's very gracious of you, Tony. Any further conversation? All right, Catherine, let's call the question.
Yep.
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Item number 12, resolution 2025, a resolution adopting amendments to the engineering code related to chapter 2 sewer design standards and chapter 5 transportation design standards.
I think this is Jen and I, actually. So I'll start this one off since I have chapter 2 and she has chapter 5. What city staff is recommending is we make a couple minor revisions to the engineering standards. I know that Terry Parch and the engineering department have grander goals to come in with kind of a revamp of whole entire sections of this. But there's two things in there that Jen and I kind of wanted to get taken care of sooner than later. Mine in chapter 2, which is the sewer design standards, it was only on one page. It's basically page 2-14 of the sewer design standards. And we were updating 3 things. Under 2.12.4 sewer service connections to gravity sewer mains, we were adding 2-A, which in your packet says all taps to existing mains shall be concrete encased. We already do that. We basically do that for the homeowners themselves. We just wanted it noted in the engineering standards, so there was no question about it. Under that same section, there is item number 7 is being added, which basically requires tracer wire to be installed in all sewer service connections. This is actually required by state law now under their new SUE requirements. So we're just adding something in here so people understand that we are abiding by state law. And all sewer services will have a tracer wire so you can hook onto it and know where that sewer service goes to underground. And number 8 is kind of the bigger one that we really wanted to add. And this is a requirement for backwater valves on all sanitary sewer services. So what this is as you're installing your sanitary sewer service, as it gets onto your property, you basically are putting a valve in the ground that comes to the surface. You can maintain it. You can take it out if you want to. But what that valve does is only allows water to leave your site. It doesn't allow water to re-enter your site, AKA if we have a sewer backup, the sewer will back up. And if your neighbor has one and you don't, you'll potentially have sewer coming into you and they will not. These are great things to have. Some of the lines in town are extremely flat. The sewer service lines are extremely flat. So when we're jetting the lines at 2000 PSI, sometimes we can even force water back into basements just by doing routine maintenance. So if they had these backwater valves installed on their sewer services, they wouldn't have that problem. They're only requiring them on new sewer services. In existing ones, if they can actually install it, it's not costing them any more money. They don't have to go farther up the service if it'll fit in the location. And we give them to them for free. So it's basically us just saying, hey, this will help you. It will help us. They're about $65 a piece. Can you install this while you're redoing your sewer service? And since we get permits through the engineering department, knowing that people are doing sewer services, we go out almost every time now anyhow and hand them one. And most of the time people put them in without a question. But we're trying to get it into the code so that as new houses come in, people know that they're required. And as people come in to pull sewer service permits, they know that they're required if they can install them when they're doing a repair. So pretty simple, nothing extravagant. We do a lot of this right now anyhow. We're just trying to get it in the code so it's easily understood and we can reference it.
Matt, about 10 years ago, as part of my ADU conversion, I was required to put a backflow preventer on my sewer line. How is that, what you're proposing now, different than what I was required to do at a cost of $2,000, by the way? Thank you for that.
I don't know what happened to you 10 years ago, to be honest with you, if that was a building code because it was below grade or something to that effect. Backwater valves are always recommended to be put in. My house wasn't 75 feet above the sewer service. I'd probably put one in myself. But how that happened, I don't know. We can talk about it offline if you want.
I just didn't know if we're doing something significantly different. I mean, I didn't appreciate the cost at the time, but I definitely appreciate the protection it's provided for my renters who live downstairs. And, you know, if it gets real bad, even me. Anyway, I didn't know if there was a significant change. Any other questions from Matt on this item? Okay. Do we want to take Jen's next and just roll on? Go ahead, Jen.
They're the same resolution, so probably.
Oh, okay. Jen, do you have anything to add?
Yes, so there's a section related to transportation also in the engineering standards. And what we're asking tonight is to add an appendix to that section overall regarding sidewalk exemptions. So what we had discussed earlier this year with a change in the code, it allows for an exemption from the requirement that sidewalks be installed on both sides of all of the roads. and that there would be a limited list of engineering standards that, or of sidewalks that would be added to the engineering standards where that would be true. So this is a slightly expanded list from what you saw earlier this year. You had asked us to take a look. So this list was developed with Terry Parch and Matt Langhorst, and it was included also the original list that you had previously, which was the Red Mountain neighborhood roads, the Cedar Crest roads, and then Midland Avenue from 4 Mile to I-70. And then additionally, Terry just drove these other streets that Matt had suggested. And so it has some more detail about whether or not there would be one sidewalk required or only one sidewalk required or none at all. And with that, I'm open to any questions that you have about this list.
Shelley.
Jen, I think I remember from the earlier conversations with Terry that this list will kind of be evolving over time, that it can be changed. Is that right?
So we would anticipate that it would be amended by resolution periodically. And what we have added here, the language says that only for those streets where there's been a public outreach process that has already taken place, where significant engineering for road construction has already been completed, and the engineer, the city engineer and the public works director agree that a sidewalk isn't needed. And then that would be brought forward in a resolution that would be brought to city council to amend this list.
Okay, great. Because I know some of the older streets that are up on the east side of town, like Lincoln and Garfield, and some of those are very narrow. They're basically one-sided streets, and I'm not sure if a sidewalk would ever be appropriate there, but just knowing that those could be added if it needed to be in the future, that's great.
And there's also a provision in the code that allows for, if there's a reason, if somebody can make a case to the city engineer or to the community development director that because of drainage or there's other reasons, and I don't have it right in front of me, but that there can be a case. So if there is a situation where there is, difficult drainage and it would be difficult to put in a sidewalk, there's already a provision for there to be just a, it's kind of like a variance, but it's just an administrative ability to make that determination. And okay, I generally rely on Terry to make that determination.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open it up for any public comment. Any public comment, raise your hand. All right, actually there is one person who's a phone call listener. If I should have said this earlier, and I apologize, but if you are on the phone, *9 is if you want to raise your hand to be recognized. So I apologize for not remembering to announce that earlier. All right, with that, I'm looking for a motion. Paula.
So I move that we approve resolution 2025, a resolution, wait a minute, make sure I got the right one here. Yes, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs adopted amendments to the engineering code related to Chapter 2 sewer design standards and Chapter 5 transportation design standards.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, been moved by Paula, seconded by Shelley. Further discussion? Seeing none, Catherine, let's call the question.
Davis,
He indicated with a thumbs up that is affirmative.
Step,
Yes.
Hershey,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Coe,
Sorry, John.
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Terry, it's 8 o'clock. We've been here for about 2 hours. Does anybody need a break before we bring you on? I see some head nods. All right, it's 8:03. Let's reconvene at 8:10 sharp. We'll see you all then.
Carl, can you still hear me? I can't hear you. But yes.
Yes, I can. Yeah, you can. You sound okay, Tony.
Okay, maybe it's better now. I
Okay.
think it's the time of day, but maybe everyone's on vacation and got better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So you're only an hour off.
I know better than to try to predict these things.
Yeah. Wait till you're in the state legislature and they go till 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
You're handling that looks like beer you're drinking.
Oh yeah, it's a decaf out of our coffee maker thing. So
A decaf what?
like a decaf, I don't know, you know, like an espresso machine we have.
Oh,
at
yeah.
the
Okay. Delish.
All right, we're all here. Let's start it back up. I think, Terry, we were back to you with South Midland traffic design.
Okay. Good evening again, Council. This is a discussion about the traffic control provisions for South Midland. As you all know, we've been working to prepare plans for the reconstruction of the road from 27th all the way out to 4 Mile Road. You know, the project is just about ready to bid. We've got maybe 4 more parcels to finish our negotiations on. We anticipate bidding the project at the end of end of August or beginning of September, and beginning our construction in November. You guys, I know, are all aware of the constraints of the project. There's really only one way in and one way out of the neighborhoods to the south and to the 4 Mile corridor as well. So we're anticipating, you know, a pretty large disturbance to the residents in that area. So with that, we wanted to really carefully consider how we ran traffic through the project. You know, we have, you know, one stance that we could have taken would be to have a very restrictive provision that said, you know, you can never go to a one-way configuration. I think that that would result in a very expensive bid. What we tried to do with this is to compromise. What we did was to put a value to a one-lane to going to a one-lane configuration during the peak commuting hours. So, you know, we decided that we would assess a fee, essentially a lane rental fee of $2,000 per hour during the peak travel periods. So 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday, and 3 to 6 p.m. on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, except for Wednesday, where we start an hour earlier because of the early drop off for the schools. So during that time frame, you know, the contractor is encouraged to, you know, keep 2 lanes at all times. That's what our specifications say. But in the event that a one-lane configuration is needed, they can go to a one-lane configuration, but during those peak period hours, they'll actually be assessed a fee. And what we did to avoid having that fee kind of distributed into all of our bid items was to create a force account. We use those in contracts sometimes to, you know, channel, you know, money for a specific issue that we know that will occur on the job. So in this case, you know, we recognize that it will be necessary to take the lane, you know, in some places. There are very narrow places in that roadway platform where it's really actually physically impossible to keep 2 lanes at all times. We also know that we have utilities and utility connections that'll need to be made. So with that, you know, we've created this force account line item. Our designer, our engineer has developed some pretty very detailed and specific phasing plans for the project, and determined that, you know, in their estimation, a reasonable number of hours for taking the lane would be 182 hours. At $2,000 an hour, that's a force account line item of $350,000 in the project. So for every bid that we get, we will have a line item in there that we specify the value of. So we'll have 182 hours at $2,000 an hour. All the contracts will reflect this $350,000 line item. The idea with it is, again, is that, you know, when they need to take that lane, they will, you know, those hours and that cost will be deducted. If at the end of the job, the contractor doesn't take all of those hours, they'll be able to bill the city for the rest of those hours. So it'll effectively be an incentive or a bonus. If they go beyond those hours, if they use more than 182 hours in the contract, we have separate provisions that allow us to go ahead and deduct the $2,000 an hour from the amount that's owed on the contract in other areas. So, you know, effectively a disincentive. So with that, I guess I'd like to hear your questions or comments.
Shelley.
Harry, I had a quick question, and it has to do with just thinking back when we first talked about this project and kind of some of the design parameters for it. And we went with the wider road base. And part of that reason we went with the wider road base was so that we could have 2 lanes open, I guess, the majority of the time. So I'm a little bit reserved about having just it being discouraged to go to 1 lane, even during daytime hours that are in between the peak hours. I'm just concerned. I think even during regular daytime hours, there's a significant amount of traffic on that road, and just worried about delays to and inconveniences to the residences. I'm just wondering if it would be reasonable or appropriate to have at least some kind of fee on just closures during other parts of the day. You know, not to the level that you have it during the peak hours, but just so that it's not, that it doesn't get out of hand on closures. Just thoughts on that. It's just a idea.
No, we've talked extensively about this and tried to, imagine area. Well, there's a few places, for instance, around the Haycox Wall, and there's one other area in the project where our designer really feels like, even with the widened roadway platform that we considered and we actually designed, it's just not going to be enough. There are going to be places where it's too narrow for them to be able to hold the 2 lanes at all times. And we recognize that we do have multiple utilities that are going back in this road. We have a new water line, we have our broadband system, we have storm drainage, so that there will be times where they have to put in a connection to cross. And I think that this idea allows them to make those connections in our non-peak periods without technically a penalty. I feel like if we create a penalty, pretty much for all of the hours, we could definitely do it, but I really believe it'll drive our bid price up. I feel like the contractor will, a little bit of flexibility around this will keep our bids within, a more reasonable range.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll defer to you all's judgment on that, but.
And just to add to that, we did create some provisions around maximum hold times and maximum lengths of places where they could be working, so that we don't get a 10-minute hold in a 1-lane configuration. I guess we've had some examples in Glenwood Canyon where you can sit out there for 15 minutes or 30 minutes while you're waiting for them to finish a specific work item. So we anticipated that as well.
Other questions, Paula?
Terry, this is complicated, and I wasn't on council when the initial phases of this, the design and stuff was discussed, and I know it took quite a lot of work by the council and the city staff. A little clarity, just because I'm trying to put my head around all of this. This $2,000 an hour is withheld from the contractor unless I'm just trying to get a feeling of what I don't quite understand the thing, I guess, is you're withholding the $2,000 as a payment, $2,000 an hour, unless they were able to finish sooner. When you're talking hours, like you were saying it's 182 hours, is that a straight 7.5 days? I mean, there's just some of this I'm just not quite understanding. And I don't want you to go into too much depth because I do value that the staff knows what they're doing here. But I just want to be clear if somebody asks me questions.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's complicated. In fact, it's taken us 4 or 5 meetings to go through, and between our engineer and Ryan and I, we've all read this over and over and over again, and asked for and make sure that we understand the same thing. We all collectively understand it together. So it's not easy. So what the idea is really is, we know that at some points, the contractor is going to need to go down to 1 lane, and we don't anticipate that it'll be like a whole day at a time, unless there's some unusual condition out there. It'll be, I imagine what'll happen is they'll be working on something in the middle of the day, and the work will go over. They just haven't finished like a utility connection or something like that. And so instead of finishing when they're supposed to at 3 o'clock, they want to go to 4 o'clock. And, we have it in this specification a way to say that, okay, we're going to let you go over, but you understand that that's going to cost you $2,000 for that hour. And so it just gives us, us a way of making it hard on the contractor for taking up the public's time during those peak periods. And I would agree with Shelley. There's that road is a very busy road. There's going to be no way that we're going to be able to really run this job without any impact to those residents. I think the idea behind this is to try to create a balance so that the contractor has some flexibility, and there's a cost to the public's time. So I think it's a reasonable approach. It's not going to be easy.
That helps.
Any other questions or comments, I guess? I'll just say, Terry, you and I probably are going to experience the joys of this more than most people. So I trust that you have a very strong interest in making sure this is done well. I think the other thing we might want to consider when it comes specifically to lane rental fees and peak hours is we hope we're being so optimistic and the school's opening, but we should also be considering maybe if contractors want to work Saturdays and Sundays, or I don't know, even maybe some language in there about powder days, sunlight. That road gets incredibly busy when you get 4 inches or more of snow, whether it be a weekday or not. And I don't know how we do that or the parameters, but I think definitely Saturdays and Sundays, expanding that 7 to 9 to maybe 7 to 10, and then expanding those hours from maybe 3 to 6, or well, not 3 to 6, but maybe 2 to 4 for the evening rush hour from sunlight. So if we're just thinking about schools and traffic and commuter traffic, we might be missing out a little bit if we're not considering sunlight.
Okay, no, that's a reasonable thing. And maybe we could try to put some language around the ski season. We did include 2 holidays, we call them holidays, the strawberry days and also the last day of the season for sunlight. But maybe we should go ahead and expand that to thinking about Saturdays and Sundays too, and allowing that movement to occur.
Yeah, I don't anticipate them wanting to work a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, but if push comes to shove and they're trying to beat, if they have some liquidated damages to be done to accomplish the project before the end of the project, and they are wanting to work Saturday and Sunday, I don't want them to gum up a lot of the ski season.
Okay. Yeah, let me take a look at that and consider it. I am trying to balance all of these different things, but I will bring that back in. I'd like to take a look at well, it wouldn't do it me any good this year, but you know, numbers on the road during those peak periods and see how they compare to our normal traffic through there. No, it's a good idea.
And I guess with everything, I think we all, you know, trust and rely on your discretion, and we don't want to make a bid packet so heavy-handed that it's going to jack up all of our bid prices with complexity and consideration. So, you know, my advice for you, at least my opinion, would be, you know, just use your best judgment, which it sounds like you always do. So I'm not too worried.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're taking this one seriously. This is a make or break provision, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring it to you guys so that you would, you know, understand it. So thank you. I appreciate your thinking about it. Do you guys have any more questions or thoughts?
That being said, when I get calls daily when we do have those holds, I'm going to totally blame you. So don't mistake who's going to get all the blame on this, Terry.
Right, no, I know. And I know you have my cell number too, so no worries. I'm ready.
Terry, don't worry, because I'm going to blame the mayor, so you're okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Next item number 14, ordinance number 19, series 2020. This is an ordinance amending the powers of Glenwood Springs Downtown Development Authority. This is the first reading. Who is presenting this? Hi, Jen.
Hi. I think I'm going to do this with Carl. If you'll indulge me for just a second, I actually was misreading the banner, and it would allow for a banner at the top of the roof line. And I know this because somebody emailed me a question directly and I had to look it back up. So if one appears at the top of a building, I didn't want you guys that I had misspoken. So, and with that, I'll move on to the ordinance number 19, series of 2020. So this would amend the powers of the DDA to give them the full authorities that under the statute. So it was limited a number of years ago just to be kind of in the DDA to be focusing on capital improvement plan. So the development and implementation of a capital improvement plan. And this would expand the powers back out to everything that is within the state statute. And this is in response to you had given staff direction to work with the DDA to allow them to do more in terms of economic development. And so this is one piece of that. The DDA does plan to work on their work plan, which is something that might take a few months, 6 months to accomplish, but the DDA is planning to work on that here in the short term. And with that, maybe Carl has some other information to add.
Not really. I think you covered it pretty well, Jen. This is just kind of restoring them to just the full statutory powers. And from my perspective, I guess, I think the timing is probably good to focus on economic development issues and allowing them that flexibility.
Okay, looks like we have a couple questions. Charlie, go ahead, and then Paula.
I don't really have a question. I noticed that Laura Kirker, the executive director, is in the audience. I don't know if she wants to weigh in on this at all with the staff, but just kind of a point. So,
go ahead, Laura.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Well, just thank you for taking this up under consideration this evening. And we appreciate Charlie bringing that up in the previous council meeting. I think, you know, given the times and some of the feedback from the council, shifting to more of an economic development course is a good action for the DDA and is helpful in terms of promoting vitality in the downtown area. Restoring kind of full statutory powers also allows us to participate in promotional events and things like that. Again, you know, promoting vitality in the downtown core, which is good for our community as a whole. So I appreciate you taking this under consideration, and I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, Paula, looks like you have a question.
So just so I have a clear understanding, this for Laura or Jen, whoever, so we resort to this push with the DDA working with economic development. How did they work with city staff and city council in their economic development endeavors? How does that tie together? Because you're the economic development director, Jen.
Laura, Laura, if you, I didn't know if she wanted to jump in. So I think we already work really closely together. And I think that probably other than kind of other members of senior staff, I talk to Laura the most every week. So we have been coordinating, and I think there are ways in which the DDA may want to expand either the facade program or other assistance to businesses, or maybe incentivizing certain types of businesses to go into empty spaces, that kind of thing. And we can certainly work together. Matt Nunez and Laura and I do a lot of collaboration already. So I think it would just be giving them the authority to do some more in terms of spending their dollars on those types of efforts.
And what would the city council's role be in that whole relationship as well?
Jen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the DDA does like to come and have an annual meeting with you guys where they talk about their goals and their budget. And I think, they are a separate legal entity, but they do care about what you think. And they would have to probably partner with us on many of these, and that would take your approval if we're going to spend any money for incentives so I think you would be part of the conversation. You may not always be the final decision maker because they are their own entity, but we work so closely together.
And then if I could just add, the work plan, it would be a document that would come to the governing body. So city council so DDA would be working on that, but then it would be something that you guys would give direction on.
Thank you. That helps add clarity.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, this is an ordinance. We need to take public comment. Laura, I see your hand's up, but I'm going to lower it because I think you had it up from previous. Does anybody else want to speak on this? Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Well, I just wanted to say that, we see working in a very collaborative role with the city. And as Jen said, we're in constant communication. We're working together right now on a grant proposal with the National Endowment for the Arts. And just this kind of restoring the DDA's full statutory powers allows us to continue to do more of that. And so I think we see that we are in partnership with the city and the chamber, and our goal is to make the downtown area as successful and as strong as possible. And that's particularly important during these challenging times.
All right. Any other public comment? All right. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you also, Christian Henney, who's on the DDA, for appearing for questions or context. A couple other questions or comments. It looks like we have comments and or motions. Tony and then Rick. Go ahead, Tony.
No. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you. I served on the Aspen Middle School Student Council, and I was the treasurer, and I've been on a lot of boards and commissions and other councils, and I've really never seen a government group cede more of their power to other agencies, whether it be the DDA or the chamber or other organizations. I keep hearing this is a separate little independent organization. I would be supporting tonight if you guys wanted to abolish the DDA and create a downtown recovery association, and you could maybe even figure it out and use the same acronym. But with all due respect to Ms. Kirk, my understanding is her background is not in this. She's more of a landscape architect, or she was hired because of someone who would be doing the sort of beautification and spending and projects that as you know, I've opposed. So I would hope that this council would consider at some point either abolishing this or clawing back, their power and spending the people's money the way the people want it spent. This money should be used not just to help downtown businesses, but to help every business in Glenwood Springs. Guys, we either have just hit the iceberg, or you see the Titanic poster behind me, we're about to hit it. And you guys are talking about the colors of the staterooms, and maybe we should repaint. This is a major crisis, and this money is the people's money, and it shouldn't be spent the way it has been spent. And I'm no fan of the DDA, but I think now is the time to get rid of it and create an organization that is going to revitalize this community, because this is going to be a decades project, getting the city of Glenwood Springs back on its feet and getting our tax revenue recovered. So I'm not going to support this or any other motion with regards to the DDA. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Tony. I'm going to just jump in here real quick. And, a wise man once said, you attack the idea, not the person. And I think, Tony, it was out of line for you to attack Laura's expertise. And I know you may not agree with that, but I think you can disagree with the mission of the DDA. We could have a conversation. I think we should have a conversation about our partnership and where that needs to go. But I think it is something that it's a code of conduct worthy discussion that we will be having in our next meeting. So if there's future comments from any of this council about an agency or their mission or our relationship, if we can keep it to that mission, I think that's the most productive. Rick, go ahead. Rick. There you are. You're on. You're on.
Good. Oh, boy. And I just about said everything I was going to say, so I got to wind it back up again. I would listen a little bit to input about the DDA and its mission. And I think the DDA has listened to a lot of the direction that we've given it. We've never had a better working relationship. I could say the same with our Chamber of Commerce. And so having said that, I move approval of ordinance number 15 series of 2020, amending the powers of Glenwood Springs Downtown Development Authority to include all of the powers within state statute. Thank you.
Second and third.
It's been moved by Rick, seconded by Steve. Further comments? Charlie.
As you all know, I've worked with the DDA quite a bit before I got on council, and I've worked with them along with Steve as a liaison. And the thing that I've seen about the DDA is they're trying to adapt and to meet the needs of their area. They were an organization approved, I think, fairly substantially by the voters of the city when they were established 18, 20 years ago. I'm not sure exactly where we are with that. And they're doing a really good job. They contributed toward the grant program that was just approved, which helped a lot of the local business people get there. And I think there were some concerns because what they could do and not do because of this not having the development authority or economic development authority. And it is something that when I was on the DDA, I felt it was really important the DDA begin looking at economic development. How do we revitalize those empty storefronts and things downtown? And they're uniquely suited for that. And I think the staff that they have, including Ms. Kirk, is doing a phenomenal job. And I'm going to highly support this motion.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. Steve.
I just want to say I've, of course, have been sitting on the DDA now for, I guess, 6 years, 5.5 years, 5+ years. I was very close to Leslie Bethel. I've been very close and at the time of Leslie Bethel's death, it left a huge hole in the DDA, in the downtown, in the business associated with Glenwood Springs. And I never dreamed that gap could be filled by anyone until Laura came along. And Laura has done an absolutely incredible job of carrying that banner, of working with the city staff. And I actually think that in my 5.5 years on the DDA, we have never had such a good relationship with the DDA and its association with the city of Glenwood Springs. So Laura, I very much appreciate everything you've done, and I thank you very much for that.
Put your resume in.
Thank you, Steve. Shelley, go ahead.
It's interesting to me that we are back to this place to be restoring powers to the DDA, and I'm not sure what was going on in 2005 when those powers were kind of pulled back a little bit. But I was on council in 08 and 09 when in an earlier council had given the leadership and all of the governing of the DDA over to, they'd put those charges actually onto the city manager. Deborah, are you interested in being the head of the DDA? Just saying as an example, when I came on to the DDA at that time, the DDA was basically not functioning much as far as getting anything done. They were spending money on consultants and things like that. But as far as really revitalizing the downtown, there just wasn't anything happening. And it wasn't until the DDA was given a little bit more autonomy, and the city manager at that time said, you know, I really don't need the DDA director job on top of being city manager. It would be better if we hired a director. And at that time, Leslie Bethel was hired. And since that was done, and the DDA kind of were able to bring their passions to bear, and they were empowered with a director that really worked on just the downtown issues, they've achieved amazing things. And I think Laura has now stepped into that role, and she's working very well with the city. At the same time, I'd like to acknowledge what Councillor Hershey says and some of the concerns on giving up control over that area. And I think it's important to understand that, you know, the DDA has a certain amount of budget annually, and they have very distinct boundaries that they work in. And the city council will still have authority over issues that go on within those boundaries, such as the confluence area and things like that. So although, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, and I guess this is kind of a question for you, although staff and the DDA will work together on an economic planning and hopefully on how do we recover better and stronger after the COVID pandemic and not just go back to business as usual. But City Council still approves the DDA budget every year, and we would be part of that planning process and have some say in that. But again, that affects the economic development within the DDA boundary in downtown. And, you know, I applaud the DDA because people volunteer, they're local business owners, they're people who are really vested and passionate about downtown. And that's how you get things done. That's how you really revive downtown, like we've seen happen over the last 10 years. So I'll support this, but I do want to acknowledge Councillor Hershey's concerns that, you know, sometimes DDA and council can get crosswise, and we're going to have to think about how we'll work through those issues if that were to happen. But I will support this at this time. Thanks.
Is there any other comments or questions? All right. I just want to restate where we're at. This is ordinance. I think I might have spoke when I said what I said earlier. This is ordinance number 19, series of 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, amending the powers of the Glenwood Springs Downtown Development Authority, first reading. We have had a presentation, taken questions, opened it to public comment. We are now back. We have a motion. Do we have a motion? Okay. Sorry, I got lost in the shuffle. Catherine, can you take call the question, please?
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Step,
Yes.
Willman,
Absolutely, yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Here we go again. Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you. We are now down to report from city administrator, city administration, city manager.
Okay.
Deborah.
Brian is going to give you an update on the 4th of July, but first, Matt wanted to ask you guys a question, so I'm throwing it to Matt first.
I do want to ask a question. I just need a head nod or a thumbs up or a thumbs down or whatever you guys would like. We went out to bid for the new wash bay and for the fueling station at the fleet department, because obviously we're going to lose the MLC here soon. So we lose a fueling station and a wash bay. The fueling station is more important to us. The bids did come in a little bit higher than we anticipated. So we're going to have to bail on the wash bay until next year, which is fine. We have ways around that. But we do need the fueling station going so we can get it in and constructed prior to winter hitting us. And the fuel tanks are on, when they get on order, they're 8 to 12 weeks lead time. To save 2 weeks, I'd like to know if it would be okay if we moved forward with ordering 2 fuel tanks and the pumping system to go with them for a total of about $45,000. Taking a step back, the 3 bids that came in were Gould, Johnson Construction, and Seneca, who is a fueling company. Gould was the apparent low bidder. They're teaming with Dave Sarno, who's a local contractor and does fueling stations. The total bid for that we would be accepting is $249,000. The next bid was $281, and then Seneca was like $315 or something after that. You'll have a report in July 16th's council package kind of going over everything, but we were, if you guys would be okay if we authorize Gould to purchase get the tanks coming, which would require a deposit, and get the fuel pumps coming, which would require a deposit prior to that being awarded. The caveat is we need the tanks and we need the fuel pump. So if something went wrong July 16th and we had to build the station ourselves, we would still need the fuel tanks and the fuel pump, and we can make it happen at that point if we had to. So what do you guys think?
Yes.
As long as there aren't any legal issues with doing that ahead of time, and it sounds like it's below the 100,000 to go
It's
ahead
below
and purchase.
50.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unless Carl or Deborah has an issue with it, or Boyd has an issue with it, which I've talked to Deborah and Steve, nobody seemed to have an issue. Gould is qualified and the apparent low bidder, so we would be suggesting that we'd move forward with them anyhow. It just won't be for 2 more weeks.
Excellent.
I see a lot of thumbs up. I see no thumbs down or further questions. So thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Okay, Brian, for the 4th of July. It is not a very exciting event. Hopefully next year will be more fun, but I figured we should at least give you guys a real quick update about what we're doing. Assuming Brian comes over.
There he is.
Hello, Brian.
Hi. You guys hear me all right?
Yes.
I don't see him. I don't see Brian. I don't see Brian.
I don't see how to put on my video here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead. as long as you can hear me. So we will be, we've partnered with Kiwanis, and tomorrow we'll be decorating out in front of City Hall on the front lawn there with 4th of July themed decor. We've also been getting with the downtown businesses that will be decorating their business fronts, and we'll be posting pictures of those, and also posting specials that the businesses and restaurants will be doing on the 4th of July. On the morning of the 4th, we'll be handing out flags to anyone that wants to come down. We're having a scout troop that will be helping out with that, and we'll be playing patriotic music throughout that whole half of the day. We're encouraging people to come down and shop and dine responsibly while at the flag giveaway also. And I believe we're going to have the census folks that will be setting up a booth there to disseminate some information during the flag giveaway as well. And then at 8 o'clock on the 4th of July, we're going to do a minute of noise with the help of our fire department. They'll be blaring out all their sirens and lights, and we're encouraging everyone to make some noise for a minute with the Colorado Howl and noisemakers and everything that they have. We're also asking people and encourage them to, residents, to celebrate responsibly and then share their photos of how they're celebrating 4th of July. So we're doing quite a bit of social media around that. And that's going to kind of kick off a little bit of our summer activations that we'll have downtown. We're going to have some street performers performing downtown. We won't have any gathering type events, but we'll be doing a few different art things down there. We're right now working with Jen on looking at a couple of art murals in the downtown area, but we'll have some musicians down street performing. We're going to do some satellite speakers just to pipe that music around the downtown area. And then we're looking at some more unconventional type of events, different things like a drive-in concert and different initiatives like that. So you can look forward to that, and we'll kind of update council as we go along.
Thanks, Brian.
Sounds good. Sounds fun.
Okay. I guess the rest I have is to thank you to you guys. Have a safe 4th of July. Thank you to staff, and thank you to our community. So.
All right. Anything from our city attorney?
Not really anything specific. I would say that, you know, we continue to work on projects like South Midland with the engineering department, you know, working with planning on the various large projects that are coming in, working on the RMI issues. So we continue, while you haven't seen a lot from us recently, there's a lot that we're doing in the background trying to get these projects and cases and issues resolved and queued up and keep them moving forward.
Good
Thanks,
job.
Carl. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Enjoy your holiday.
You too.